Good evening, members. Before we start the meeting, we are not expecting a fire drill, so if a fire alarm goes off, please make your way out to the nearest emergency exit and gather at the front of Runnymede Hall. Please switch off your mobile phones to silent. Welcome to this meeting to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Grace Watson, the chair of this committee. Can I ask members to introduce themselves, starting from my left?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Nick Harvey, Councillor for North Ward, Canvey Island.
Lorraine Bredding, Councillor for Canvey Central.
Good evening, Councillor Carol Sage, Canvey Island, East Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Lorraine Larman from Appleton Ward.
Good evening, Councillor David Thomas for Winter Gardens Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Matt Cortez, Thundersley South.
Good evening, Councillor Kate Knott from Hadley St James.
Good evening, Councillor Diana Jones, Appleton Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Sharon Ainsley, St Mary's.
Good evening, everybody. Councillor Kieran Bowker, Tarbots.
Good evening, Councillor Nicola Benson, St George's Ward.
Thank you. I would also like to welcome Jenny Beaumont and Dale Phillipson, who are our new independent persons for Overview and Scrutiny Committee and are joining us remotely this evening. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Can I ask sitting councillors at the back to please introduce yourselves also?
Councillor Michael Fuller, Cabinet Member for Environment. I'm here in relation to item 5 on your agenda this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening all. Councillor Rob Lillis, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Housing.
Thank you. Item 1, apologies. Members, we've received apologies from Councillor Brooks, Councillor Wimbledon, Councillor Edwards. Are there any other apologies? No. No further apologies, thank you. Item 2, members' interest. Are there any interest to declare? No interest. Item 3, minutes. Are the minutes for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 9th of April 2025 agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4. Oh, sorry, I'll just sign the minutes. Thank you very much. Item 4, Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan Progress Update. Members, we have before us a report from the Assistant Director, Policy, Performance and Customer, providing update on the progress made against the action plan to address recommendations from the Local Government Association's Corporate Peer Challenge. Mr. Brooke, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So the purpose of this report is to present to the committee an update on the progress made against the action plan, which was to address the recommendations from the Local Government Association's Corporate Peer Challenge, which took place between the 3rd and the 5th of September last year in 2024. This is the second of 2 progress reports, with the first of these reports coming to this committee in April. The recommendation is that it is proposed that the committee resolves to note the progress made in the action plan as set out in Appendix 1 to the report. So by way of introduction, sections 4.1 to 4.4 set out a reminder of what the Corporate Peer Challenge is. This is broadly unchanged from the report that was brought in April, but the Corporate Peer Challenge forms a key part of the improvement and assurance framework for local government. The section also provide a summary of what is involved in the Corporate Peer Challenge, and in our case this was a 3-day on-site visit from the peer team, gathering information and views from more than 25 meetings when they met with over 100 people, which was then supplemented by their own research and reading. The Corporate Peer Challenge recommendations are set out in section 5. There were 7 recommendations from the Corporate Peer Challenge report, and it's against these recommendations that the action plan provided in Appendix 1 was developed. We're required to have a progress report, review within 8 to 10 months of the original corporate peer challenge and publish the findings of that progress review within 12 months. However, we've just started the discussions with the LGA about the timing of the follow-up visit, and it seems that there is a recent trend that all of the peers who come to the original challenge are often keen to come to the follow-up challenge because they want to see how the organisation that they've worked with is progressing, and therefore because of that it's likely that probably the peer challenge will be taking place, or the follow-up, in around the autumn time of this year, possibly around October. That's just really to allow the peers to have enough time and notice to be able to organise their own diaries. But we'll have an update on that once it's all been booked in. In terms of the options, Section 6 sets out 2 options within the report, with option 2 as the preferred option, and that is to note the progress that is made against the action plan. So just coming on to the action plan in Appendix 1, as requested by members of this committee at the meeting in April, more detail has now been provided within the action plan against each of the actions, which now shows the following: the status of the action, the completion percentage, any target dates for any sub-actions, and then the completion dates for those. So I'll just briefly go through each of the actions as they're presented and then happy to take any questions. So the first action relates to financial planning and addressing the financial gap in future years. Details of this are provided in the right-hand column, and this action is now complete. Action 2 relates to business change programme. A summary of areas of focus are also provided on the right-hand side. This action is now complete, so in other words, the programme has been developed, but it's now being implemented, with the first transformation board scheduled for July. Action 3 relates to the development of the new corporate plan. This has been developed and was adopted by Council at their meeting on the 26th of March. I think I'd have given the update at that time at the meeting in April, but this action is now complete. Action 4 relates to developing relationships between senior political and managerial leadership teams. And the update shows that a variety of meetings and processes have been put in place since the Corporate Peer Challenge happened. This includes regular meetings and briefings, and this action is now complete, although obviously recognising that the relationship between senior political and managerial leadership is an ongoing action, so it's not just a once and done. Action 5 relates to the approach to risk and performance management across the Council, with the Council increasing officer capacity in this area. I think when I last gave the update, I said that there were new employees starting in April. Those employees have started and have been doing a lot of work on this piece of software that we use to hold performance data and our risk registers. There's some other developmental work, which includes tracking audit actions, which is now in place, and then further work to link performance, risk and financial reporting, as was asked in the recommendation. So we've got this action currently showing as partially complete, but on track for completion by the dates that are set out in the report. Action 6 relates to maximising opportunities for effective scrutiny and challenge. So we have streaming of live meetings, including this one, enhanced communications about council activity, the biannual Castle Point Together magazine, and also use of consultation software to run a range of consultations as listed in the report. At the time that I wrote this report, it was flagged as partially complete and delayed, although since then the independent pursers, as we know, have now been appointed and they were ratified on 21st of May, and therefore this action is now also complete. The final action, Action 7, relates to addressing a gap flagged at one of the partnership meetings that the Corporate Peer Challenge team had with partners in the community and voluntary sector about a council operational lead engaging and involving this sector. This is the only action on the plan that has been delayed, mainly due to the capacity of the lead officer and his focus on the housing improvement programme. That hasn't changed since April. That housing improvement programme continues and requires his full attention. However, I'm pleased to be able to report that we have now asked the Castle Point Association for Voluntary Services, so CAVS as many will know them, to share the community commitment. That was part of this action, but also our new corporate plan with partners. So partners will be cited on these 2 important strategic documents for the council. So that was all I wanted to say to introduce the report. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. Do members have any questions? Councillor Knott.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask regarding the 50 people who have been trained in the new software? Are there more people that need training in that software? In which case, sort of how many were you talking about and what sort of time frame?
So we have 70 licences for this software across the council. So not every single council officer will be using the software. However, everybody who is either starting from the chief executive, the directors, the assistant directors, and all of the service managers, and then a selection of other staff who deal quite a lot with performance or risk management. So in terms of the training, that training has been completed, but obviously when we get new people coming into the council who require training on the software, then we'll give that on an as and when basis. Thank you.
Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. On section 6, you give us the figures of how many people are engaging with us on Facebook, X and LinkedIn. Could you firstly also add in YouTube, with this being live streamed, to see how many watches we get? And also, is there any way of seeing how that figure's grown over perhaps a 6-month period, seeing if we are engaging with more people as it progresses? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so we do have good reporting on this. I don't have that to hand, but what I'll do is I'll go away and give you a bit more of a trend analysis of the engagement over those platforms, and then noted on the YouTube views as well. Yeah, we'll get that information to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Broding.
Thank you. Looking at the plan, and as a number of items being put in place, what steps are being taken to monitor how effective this plan is going to be, or what effect it's having currently?
Thank you. So this is one of the reasons why we have the follow-up visit from the peer challenge team. So they will obviously have had all of their detail and be aware of the reasons behind the recommendations that they raised. We put forward the action plan very much with the purpose of saying, well, actually, we believe if we implement these actions, it will address the recommendations. But very much part of that sector-led improvement would be the peer challenge team coming back, talking with us, talking through the action plan, talking through the actions that we've taken, and then I think using various other methods, including interviews with key partners, members of staff, members, etc., will then arrive at a view as to whether there have been the improvements and that we have in fact addressed the recommendations that have been raised.
Councillor Broding, did you wish to come back?
Yes, please. Okay, looking at item 6, for example, one of the things was the corporate plan encourages greater resident participation, and engagement in council business. Are we reviewing that on a more regular basis, or rather than just sit and wait for the LGA to come back?
So in terms of the engagement in council business, so as part of the corporate plan, we have something in there around looking into undertaking a resident survey. So it's something that Essex County Council have done regularly, but we'd like to do one more locally ourselves. So that is a piece of work that's currently sitting with me and working with members of the team to explore the options around that and how we can best go around that particular one. So that is an example within the corporate plan of greater resident participation and engagement, and we'll be doing that quite specifically with a resident survey.
Thank you. Councillor Knott.
Thank you, Chair. I see on item 7, it's reassuring that 2 new community safety officers have started. But however, the role relating to health and well-being, I see it's subject to further discussion, and I understand the reasons for that discussion. But the peer challenge was 9 months ago, so I wonder if you could just explain, just to make it a bit clearer, why it's still not decided where that role of health and safety will sit, and how much longer do you anticipate those discussions to be going on for?
So the health and wellbeing role is one that I believe is being picked up in the service review for that particular service area. There may be colleagues here who might have a better idea of the timescale on those, but it's very much making sure that that particular role sits in the right part of the council. It was a role that I think was jointly, it was funded partly by Essex County Council, and it was a joint role between us and Rochford councils. And I believe that Rochford Council are now have that particular post as a sort of full-time post within their own establishment. But in terms of the service review, I don't know the timescales on that and when it's expected to conclude, but there may be others in the meeting this evening who could answer that with a bit more detail, but I don't want to commit anyone at the moment, but thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There is a reason why it's been delayed, and it's obviously the officer that was appointed into that particular role has now left the council. So we are looking at options, and the reason why we're doing that is because health and safety cross many departments. So where it sits or has sat in the past may not be the natural place for it to sit in the future. What we'll do is we'll come back with a timetable for that as soon as we possibly can for when that will be resolved.
Thank you. Councillor Bredding, you wish to come back?
Yes, sorry to keep hassling on this, but I think there's an awful lot of work's gone into addressing the items that the LGA identified and that Council has been working on. Might it be useful for a follow-up plan to have emerged from this, giving us details of what you're doing and the success or things that are still needed to be worked on at a later date?
So again, I think with the follow-up visit, there will be further recommendations. There will probably be things that they maybe feel we haven't addressed recommendations as fully as they would have liked to have seen, or perhaps other issues that may have emerged since the original corporate peer challenge that we would like to then include in a further improvement action plan. So I think that's something that we'll be developing. This isn't a kind of like, once this plan is done, that's it. We stop there. There will be a follow-up action plan, and I think that's something that we could bring into this committee to keep a track on. Thank you.
Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Council not actually asked both the questions I was going to ask. No, it's fine. And I would also like to echo that I'm very grateful that we've got two new community safety officers, and they're starting to do some really good work, so I'm very pleased with that. Regarding the appointment of the health and wellbeing, is that going to be a shared facility with Rochford, or is it going to be a dedicated person within Castle Point? I'm just mindful that we've got large areas of deprivation in Castle Point, and the need is probably stronger here.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. Yeah, that's one of the issues that's been looked at the moment. Just to explain, part of the significant changes, obviously, we're working with Sport England, Active Essex, as part of the Place Partnership, and the funding that is available through that. And that focus of that partnership is around health and wellbeing. And it's about using recreation and sports for health and wellbeing purposes, and therefore it's making sense to have some integration into that partnership, because obviously that then levers in other resources through the role that's doing with wider partners across Essex, Essex County Council, and locally as well. But in terms of maintaining the split role with Rochford, that is something that is part of the discussions.
Thank you for that explanation. Welcome to the independent person, Jenny Beaumont.
Oh yes, good evening everyone. Could I just ask a question about the community and voluntary engagement matter that you mentioned? So the Assistant Director's focus on that has been around housing improvement, and that was given as a rationale, I think, in the previous notes, with regard to lack of progress and some contribution maybe towards the delay there. You're now talking about review in autumn. How confident are you that that will be able to be completed within that time frame now, bearing in mind that I think that was sitting at only 25% completion?
Please.
So I think with the fairly sort of simple action of having asked CAVs to help us to send out the community commitment and the corporate plan to partners, that percentage is probably increased slightly. I think with this particular action, it's quite a tricky one, because the partnership group was one that was very much looking at health and well-being, and it was that group of partners, as opposed to those that were more focused on the kind of economic development side of things, who raised this point about they're feeling like there's a bit of a void within the council. I think, and it says this within the report itself, that of course there are other partnerships and other partnership work that goes on across the council, and I think realistically we're probably never going to end up with a single point of contact for partners. But that particular area is one where there is still that gap, really. I think once we have a health and wellbeing partnership officer in place, they could well be that contact. So I'm reasonably confident, to be honest, and I think that, in the absence of that, and rightly with the assistant director in that area concentrating on the housing improvement programme, there are other partnerships going on all the time, and we do have strong links across a number of senior managers across the council into those different partnerships as well. So it's one that I think was quite a focus of the peer challenge team, but I think in partnerships in general we do have a good story to tell, and we do have strong partnerships across the piece. So I am reasonably confident that by the time we get around to the peer challenge coming in again, that we should have bottomed out this particular action, have a much clearer view in terms of who that single point of contact would be for those partners who focus principally on health and wellbeing related matters.
Okay,
Thank you. Councillor Larman.
With all the points that we've got, and you've said they're completed, and I'll take up Councillor Beardley's point, do we not have an internal audit system that we could actually audit ourselves before we wait for the peer review to actually check on our to be monitoring it? Have we got any criteria to monitor it against?
So the corporate peer challenge will follow a range of areas that they will look at with each of their corporate peer challenges that they do. So yes, there is probably something that we can do. I mean, to a degree, I think that the conversations that we're having here and the conversations that we'll be having with senior managers as well as this action plan was implemented is a form of audit. I can talk with the head of internal audit who we use and see whether he thinks that there will be some value in doing a piece of audit work in advance of the corporate peer challenge team coming back and doing a further review and get his views on that. I think that's probably the best answer I can give for now. But yeah, I'll ask the question and see whether that's something that he feel that both they can resource in the time that we're talking about, but actually what the value would be coming from that piece of work to see if an independent look at that would provide some value towards.
So as this is an area that I work in, I feel that if I'm being audited, I always do a pre-audit, get an internal audit done before we do, so we can actually plug some of them gaps before we waste the time and getting the peer reviewing.
Let me ask a question. It's a good challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to recommendation 5, and just following up from a question asked by Councillor Knott earlier on about the training of officers with regard to the new IT system, can you tell me will there be an updating of training for officers after a period of time? We'll start with that question if I can follow on afterwards. Thank you.
Yes, so I mean, there is an offer from the team that ran the training that if anyone wants refresher training, if anyone needs some support on using the system, that they're always able to do that. Personal view, but I do think the system is quite intuitive, and I think once people have had that training and know their way around it, they're able to use it. But we haven't really sort of formally decided on a specific date for some follow-up training. It's probably more likely needed for those new starters who are going to be using the system, who will be coming from a base of sort of zero, really. But those who have been trained already and are using the system, hopefully will be able to continue to understand how to use it.
Councillor Jones, did you wish to come back?
Yes, please. Thank you. It's just that usually in any organisation, and even for the members ourselves, that we have regular training and an update. So despite knowing the routines of measures and so on, would it not be a good idea to have on the calendar regular training for members? Presumably there will be updates to the systems, new sort of measures that come in that are unknown to the officers, would it not be a good idea to actually have it on the calendar?
I think there's a fair challenge, and I think that as we use more of the system, and we're very much starting from not using much of the system to now starting to use lots of different modules within the system, that as we start to roll out different things, there will be that need for that training. But I think I take your point about actually planning some follow-up training. I think it's probably more likely to be on an as and when basis as we do start to roll out the different modules, as opposed to a set date where we'll train people on everything that's in the system. But I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Do members have any further questions? No? Members, are the contents of the report noted? Noted. Thank you. Agenda item 5, Environment Enforcement Policy. Members, we have before us a report from the Assistant Director, Environment, asking members to consider the Environment Report Policy. Mr. Jarvis, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. I'm sure we'd all agree that as a council, we want to provide our residents and visitors with a clean and attractive borough. And in fact, we have to do so. We have a legal responsibility to do so as the principal litter authority for the borough. To do this, we provide street cleansing activities via our contractor Pinnacle, but we also need to ensure we enforce against those who are clearly found using our streets, parks, open spaces as a dumping ground for their waste. There's a three-pronged underlining principle for this when dealing with environmental crime. Firstly, it's to inform. That's to provide the public with details as to how they can dispose of their waste correctly, which we do via our website, and members of the public can phone in and get guidance from our contact centre. Secondly, we educate, so we undertake campaigns. We'll undertake campaigns via Keep Britain Tidy and possibly our own campaigns. And we'll also engage with the public where we know issues in littering or fly tipping hotspots, which would involve knocking at doors, see if we can find out information from public if they've seen anybody acting suspiciously or dumping waste. And finally, enforce, and that's where it's clear a person has taken no notice of the information and education we've provided and has dumped their waste illegally. This environment enforcement policy gives a clear approach to how the council via its environment team will undertake these enforcement powers. Section 3 of the policy provides details on each offence. This detail is important as it ensures officers authorised to undertake enforcement use the correct legislation for the offence they are enforcing. If a case was to go to court, courts are very keen that the right legislation is used. Otherwise, unfortunately, they'll just throw the case out. Section 4 details who the authorised officers are. I can confirm that we have 5 officers authorised to undertake enforcement at differing levels. Sections 5 and 6 go on to explain enforcement action and the use of fixed penalty notices and community protection notices. And finally, Appendix 1 in the policy sets out the fixed penalty and community protection notice fine levels. And I would draw your attention to point 5 within the report, which provides further clarification in respect of the fines, particularly 5.3, which shows fine levels yet to be set. And it's important that we have these fine levels set. At the beginning of the report in 3.1, it provides the recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Councillor Knott.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be helpful to define advertisement in the policy with regards to fly posting? The common interpretation of this would be advertising a business or an event. However, my understanding is that in the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, it defines that an advertisement can also be advertising a concern. And it would be helpful if our policy made this clear, as it seems to me that there's an increasing tendency to fly post politically motivated campaigns and concerns across the Castle Point Borough, and be it national or local matters.
I think I'm going to have to take that question away because I need advice from our planning department on that one.
Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Chair. My question was actually for 3.02, the dog fouling section. It says that it's an offence for any person in charge of a dog which defecates at any time on land within the borough of the Castle Point covered by this order, not to remove the faeces from the land forthwith. What do we stand in? Sorry, my question is, if they pick up the faeces in a bag and then walk a few paces down and then chuck it in a bush, is that the same thing? Are they then going to be, charged the same?
So if they've picked up the faeces, they've complied with the legislation around clearing their waste. If they throw it into the bush, they've then committed a littering offence.
Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the fly tipping, it says that environmental crime offences, the threshold is the same as a criminal. It's a criminal offence, so it's got to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. With fly posting, how can we prove who put the poster up? We can prove the contents, but we can't prove who's actually put the poster up itself.
No, it is always very difficult, particularly with fly posting, to ascertain who has actually put it up, because generally speaking, fly posting is where posters are put up all over the place, and generally speaking, you'll find there, we'll clean your floors, and there's a mobile number. We have in the past phoned the mobile number, and as soon as we start to explain who we are, the phone goes dead. So it is very difficult on fly posting to actually catch the culprit. But obviously what we need to ensure is that the offence is listed. So if we do catch the culprit, we can take action against them. I think one of the things that we would always do if somebody reports somebody fly posting, we'd ask them for as much information as they've got as to who, if they know who's doing it, so we can find out from there.
Councillor Larman.
On point 3.06 on the fly tipping, I've recently been doing a lot of walking around Benfleet and noticed a lot of fly tipping of fire extinguishers, sofas, etc. And most of these are on unadopted roads. So how do we get the reports in? How do we know where it is? Is there someone going out and identifying it and where it is? I mean, do we have a campaign for them residents along them areas to say if they notice anything, because they are very sparse houses along there, that they actually report it, and do they know who and how to report it?
So generally speaking, reports of fly tipping are probably our highest number of reports throughout a month. So we can almost guarantee that if somebody sees something, they will report it to the council, which they can do on the website, or they can do phoning into the council. We have, as I mentioned, we've got a team. We've taken on a new member of staff who is dedicated to enforcement and education, and they will be taking these cases, and they will be going out and proactively trying to find out who's fly tipped the waste and see if they can find any evidence. But I think in the number of years I've dealt with this, the public are very good at knowing that it's the council that deals with it, and they'll phone it through and report it to us.
You wish to come back, Councillor Larman?
Yes, please. What sort of timescale? Because I've been watching this particular fly tipping rubbish for the last sort of like 9 weeks now, and nothing has moved. And in fact, it's got worse. So, is there any timescales that it should be removed?
So the contract with our contractor for fly tip, they have to remove it within 1 working day of it being reported to them. But that sounds like it hasn't been reported to us. So if you email myself where the location is, and then we'll take that forward. always helpful.
Councillor Sage.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at 3.03 dogs on leads, the introduction of a public space protection order relating to dogs on leads on Canvey Island foreshore. Is this 24 hours or is this between a set certain time? Because it just doesn't say anything. It doesn't give me any timings or anything like that at all. And while I'm here, you need to look at the next line down, the English.
So there is a set time for the dogs on leads. It's 1st of April to 30th of September, and I think it's between 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock, but I'll need to check that for you.
Wish to come back, Councillor Sage?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Can you put it in this document so that people can see it? And as I said, take a look at the next line down.
Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. Once again, I've been beaten to most of my questions. Yes, I too was going to mention about the timing of the dogs on leads. And I was going to suggest that it could be amended to 9 a.m. to 7 p.m, but I mean 6 p.m. is better. And I was also going to ask, could a section of the foreshore be allocated as a dog-friendly beach? The tide will naturally clean the beach anyway, and there are certainly sections of the beach which are not accessible to some people because you have to climb over the breakers. So I can't see why we couldn't allow a dog-friendly beach all year round, if that was a possibility. So that was that one. If I can come back to dog fouling, made exactly the same notes as my colleague here. So that's that answered. And on section 3, 3.0, the scope, I would like to know, are the utility companies, including the water companies and utilities, included in this policy? Thank you.
So we'll take the beach area forward and review that for you. In terms of the utility companies, it depends what the offence is or what's happened. Obviously, through environmental health, they'll have specific powers to deal with what statutory organisations can do. But for instance, if a utility company came along and decided to dump some of the waste that they had produced out of the work they were doing, then we would probably clearly deal with that as a fly tip. But it depends very much on what specifically has happened as to what legislation can be used.
You wish to come back, Councillor Ainsley?
As you might expect, I've got lots of questions on this subject. If only this was working. Yeah, it's gone off again. Thank you. Right, yes. So on graffiti, I've written on 3.05, what will the Environment Agency and ECC actually do about enforcement?
Bear with me.
And I have a question on fly tipping, if that's okay. Yes, I will. So on fly tipping 3.06, does this legislation apply to the landowner who fails to secure their land and prevent fly tipping occurring? Is occupier in this sense owner? Thank you.
So in terms of the graffiti, we would work with if it's a county-owned piece of property or an Environment Agency-owned piece of property, we would work with them to get that graffiti cleared. We wouldn't look to enforce against them in the first instance. We would look to work with them. In terms of the fly tipping, the occupier can either be the landowner or the person responsible for the piece of land. So if you, for instance, take the dikes on Canvey, they're not technically owned by the Environment Agency, but if they're a main river, then the Environment Agency have responsibility for them.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Ainsley. Councillor Bredding.
Thank you. I've just really got one question, and I actually am really pleased to see this report today. And I know there are some areas that need to be looked into, but in the main, my main concern is enforcement of this document. Because on Canvey, and I'm sure Councillor Thomas will back me up on this, every other day, 2 days, same bit of fly tipping gets taken at the same places from residents, and you get called out and you pick it up, great, no problem with that. But we're not addressing the underlying problem of the people that are doing this, because there are no names on there. There's nothing to say, but they dump their massive great bits of furniture because they can't get them taken to Pitsea. And that, I think, is the biggest problem. So I don't know how we can... Enforcement is going to be our biggest barrier to this, and I don't know what we can do practically to enhance the enforcement of this. So perhaps you could...
So as I mentioned earlier, we've got a new member of staff that started last week, whose primary focus will be on enforcement and education. So through Lee's team, I would be expecting us to start to build up a list of the hotspots across the borough, and we would start to work in those areas to determine what kind of waste is being putting out, start to see if we can see where it's possibly coming from, and start to educate in that area as well. It's very difficult if a sofa appears, you don't know where it's come from, and so in the end sometimes there's only so much you can do. But also you find if you start to make a presence in that area and start to ask questions in that area, it does sometimes start to sort itself out, because somebody will think, oh, I might get caught out eventually, sort of thing. So I think on that question, I would say, because it's a new post, because it's something that we've not really done before, in 6 or 7 months' time, let's see what sort of, how productive it is and what we're learning and how we can take that forward. But yeah, but we certainly want to be proactive with what we're doing on the enforcement and the education side now. So,
thank you, Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. My question, I've got 3 points to the same question, all to do with vehicles. Do we actually have any power for what we're classing as an abandoned vehicle if it is legally taxed, MOT'd and insured, even if it quite simply hasn't moved for a month or two? Secondly, do we have the ability to get the registered owner's details from the DVLA, or are they barred due to GDPR? And also, what do we do if someone's selling vehicles from home, so their sales vehicles are actually on their own property, but it means that all of their personal vehicles are put on the road, adding to the parking problem? Thank you.
So in terms of point 1, if a car is taxed and MOT'd, it's legally allowed to park on the highway unless there's parking restrictions. What we are finding, what we've noticed particularly since COVID, with a lot more people working from home, cars are staying in place for quite a lot longer. So we do get reports on them. As I say, if it's taxed and MOT'd, it's perfectly legal and able to park on the road. In terms of point 2, we have a connection with the DVLA, so we can, and that's part of the investigation. So if we're of the opinion that the vehicle has possibly been abandoned, we can get the registered keeper details off the DVLA. Obviously, there's GDPR around there about who we can share that with and what we've got to do with the information, but we can get those. In terms of point 3, similar to point 1, really, they're perfectly entitled to park their vehicles on the road. Vehicles that are being sold from a residential property is more a planning aspect, I think, for the property itself. So,
welcome to the independent person, Dale Phillipson.
Thank you, Chair. I've a question around outcomes of this policy, and I'm interested in how the different categories of environmental offences will be performance managed and how those various metrics are used to manage the contractor.
So we work very closely with our contractor in terms of in working out where the hotspots are. The contractor is required when they're clearing a fly tip to search it for evidence in the first instance and then pass that information back to us. And actually we work in tune because we know that there are hotspots out there, so we'd want the contractor very active in be able to clear those sites. And we match a lot of the evidence we get through service requests, through our own inspections against how the contract is performing. And it's very much, as I say, a working tandem, and it sort of provides all the data that we need to see where we need to increase our education and enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Point 6, fixed penalty notices. How many people have we got on the council that are authorised to issue them? And is there any way of us knowing how many they actually issue?
So we will have 5 officers authorised to issue fixed penalty notices. Because of the way that we've had to restructure the team over the last couple of years, there's not been many being issued. But as we move forward, we'll keep a database of what's been issued and we can provide those details.
Councillor Ainsley, you wish to come back?
I did, and I'd like to just address what Councillor Harvey has just raised. When these fines are issued, these fixed penalty notices are issued, are they issued on a handheld device so that the fine is automatically registered on the database?
So it depends on the type of offence. So if it's a littering offence or a dog fouling offence, generally speaking, that's something that is physically observed by the officer. That will be served via a fixed penalty book, although we will probably be looking at moving more towards an electronic way of doing that. If you're dealing with a fly tip, generally speaking, you're investigating the fly tip first of all. So that is actually the fixed penalty is served via post to the address in a document format.
Councillor Ainsley.
I'm just concerned that there's a risk there that it's open to fraud. I'm not suggesting anybody would, but if it's not automatically logged, how can we be sure that everything is being recorded?
So the process that the officer would go through is set out in terms of how they would. So if let's just take a littering offence. If they see a person littering, they will talk to that person, explain to them what the offence is, and then they'll start to take down that person's details, and then they will serve them with the fixed penalty notice. And obviously we keep a copy ourselves, and then that's all data logged this end on a spreadsheet, so we can see what's been served, what the date for the fine payment is.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding bulky waste, so not that it's easier than it was to find online, but I find the wait time to have a bulky item removed is more than what people expect. It could be a couple of weeks, such as sofas, fridge freezers and things like that. Normally when someone signs up for a bulky waste collection, they have a sort of an earlier date set in mind because they're having it delivered to their house. And I think because we take so long to remove it on the booking system, this is why some of it is being dumped here, there and everywhere. There have been occasions on the website where I don't know whether we're reaching capacity or there's staff issues where bulky waste has actually been stopped at certain points in the year when you've gone online. is there capacity to keep it running all year round? Can it be improved to take more bookings?
So the waste and recycling side is not my service area. So, but we'll take a note of that. We'll take it back to the AD for waste and recycling. But I would also say it's a good point. We need to understand the link between that and if that's increasing fly tipping as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Benson.
Thank you. My question was just about the fixed penalty notices. Does it differ depending on the offence? The amount?
Yes. So if you look at the Appendix 1 to the policy at the end of the policy, you'll see the different levels of fine level.
I got you. Sorry, didn't scroll down that far.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, I mean, to add to that, obviously, if you look at the fine level for fly tipping against littering, for instance, you can see that the government have placed greater emphasis on fly tipping in terms of the fine level than littering.
Councillor Boker.
Yeah, just regarding the fly tipping hotspots, obviously you said you're going to be employing lots of, for want of a better term, actions weaponry. Would that include CCTV? If it's a known hotspot, will that be used evidentially? Covert CCTV, possibly?
Yes.
You like questions like that, don't you?
Yes.
So do I. Councillor Larman.
And we use hidden cameras under like a covert situation. I know the CCTV might help, but they're not in the unadopted roads and some of the places that this happens. And obviously, if we do understand where it is, these little cameras, they can be hidden so well. And I think that's the only way of sort of catching some of these people or groups that are littering. Okay. So
Yes.
it's not really a question, but yeah.
No, we have got the equipment to do that.
You have got the equipment. Yeah. Okay, lovely.
Councillor Cortez.
Thank you again, Chair. You said that part of prevention, or under this point 2 purpose, 2.2 prevention, it's placed litter and dog waste bins in areas where there's high footfall. Firstly, they also need to be emptied. Quite often, certainly in the summer months, you go past them and the bin's there and it's got all the rubbish piled round it. And also, we could do with having the bins that allow cigarette butts and ash to go in the top, rather than people just throwing their cigarettes on the floor. Thank you.
We'll take that point away. I mean, the litter bins we buy now have stub plates on the top of them, so they should be able to put them in the bin. But we'll take the points away about the emptying and stuff. So,
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. On fly tipping, I find it really strange that in one of my sign-written vans, I can chuck a mattress in it, book it at Pitsy and go and get rid of it. But I can't take it round the corner to Benfleet. Is there a reason for that? Because if you can get rid of it locally and a neighbour can do you a favour, you're not going to fly tip it. My neighbour has got an Amarok pickup, which he uses for his family. It's got a back on it. For him, it's a car. He's not even allowed to take it in the tip with a bag of rubbish in it because they say it's a commercial vehicle. That's my first question. I don't understand the answer to that one at all.
So the recycling centres are managed by Essex County Council. So it's not a rule that we've set. It's a rule that Essex County Council have set. So I can't obviously provide an answer for that one. But
my second one is going back to the fixed penalty notices. Your officers that are going out on patrol, are they? A policeman can ask you to prove your name and address when he writes a ticket out. Have they got the same power? Because I could, if I was going to get one, I'd just say I'm Stuart Jarvis and give someone Mickey Mouse address. No, how are they ever going to find me?
you may give my name, but you don't know my address. So part of the training that we'll do with the team and getting them authorised, there's powers within legislation that gives the officer, it's a requirement of the person to give the name and address. So We'll obviously be working quite closely with the community protection team that's just started, and we're also looking to form a bigger and greater links with the police as well. So just to help us in those matters. So.
And Councillor Thomas.
Thank you again, Chair. 3 very quick questions, all regarding the enforcement officers. So, the enforcement officers, dog fouling is a big issue, I presume, across Castle Point, certainly at the back of my house where the lake is, and a lot down the seafront, and that is a big thing online anyway, people moaning about it. So, I can't say I've ever seen an enforcement officer, so do they wear uniforms when patrolling? The other thing is, do they have cameras on them? And are they GPS trackable to say they are actually patrolling the areas they're supposed to be patrolling? And that's about it at the moment. I may come back with another question, depending on your answer.
So all staff wear PPE, and it's Castle Point liveried. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a new gentleman that started last week, so he's only just started, so we're having to prep him up. They are equipped with body cams, not only for recording evidence, but obviously for their own protection. And they also have a people safe device, which is it's PPE, but it's also trackable as well. So, but we will put in place patrol areas so we know when they are, when they're. Dog fouling is one of those things you've got to be there on the time it happens to actually deal with it. So, yes.
Yeah, go on then.
Thank you, Chair. So, in most areas, people tend to walk their dogs at certain times of day anyway, around about dinner time, lunchtime and early mornings, or mid-morning, it sort of dies off. I would like, and I suppose everyone else here would like, updates on how many people tackled over this, how many fines issued on a monthly basis, even if it's just a report coming out to us so we can see how it progresses over time and that enforcement action is actually happening. Thank you.
Yep, we'll take that away.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to fly posting, I know that Councillor not asked this question earlier on, but there are many instances of fly posting around the borough, certainly on the mainland where I live and where I drive around, and I've seen many posters, small, large, that have remained in place around the railings. Are we, are the enforcement officers going to be attending to these quite promptly?
So there's 2 answers to that. In terms of fly posting, I would expect our contractor to be removing that as they see it. But also, I know we'll be working with the planning department on the sort of the advertisement side to make sure that we're taking the enforcement action against those banners correctly. Although I'm 99.99% certain that banners on railings won't have the permission of Essex Highways to place them there on a highway structure, we just need to find a way of making sure that that is correct. But we will be looking to ensure that advertisement and where we can definitely ascertain who the person is, the actions taken against them.
Councillors, I think we've asked a lot of questions on this tonight. Councillor Ainsley.
Not working again. God. It's just not working again. On the forfeiture orders, are we able to actually sell anything that we've seized and the proceeds go to a community fund?
I don't believe we're legally allowed to sell items on, unfortunately.
Mr. Jarvis, how frequently would you like to give regular updates on these things?
I think I'd need to take that away. As I say, we've got a new team, so they've only just started. So I'd like to work with Lee and the operations managers so we can set that out. But what I think we can probably come to an agreement on that within the month and come back to you and let you know on that.
With any recommendations noted. Members, I will move the recommendation set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Okay, I apologise. We're still going with questions.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question as just to point out that there are grammatical errors in the report, as there were in the previous report as well, which I didn't bring up at the time, are by 4.1 in the introduction. It says that the council will do enforcement. I believe it should be perhaps use enforcement. There's another one under 7.1 where it says, let me just find it, therefore, and reduction in environmental crime. I think it means any. Followed by within the report, the policy itself, if I can get this to move, on page 11. Please bear with me. At the top of the page, it says, it is an offence for any person in charge of a dog or dogs does not to have the dog or dogs on a lead. There's an error there, obviously. And come on. Oh, this, got it. Page 13, under 3.09, the middle paragraph, which starts the CNEA 2005, also makes an offence, etc., etc. The next sentence, this only applies to persons who are during a business of carrying out restricted works. So I believe that's a mistake as well.
Councillor Jones, can I ask if there is any spelling discrepancies or other discrepancies in the report? Can you please email the officers so it can be corrected before the meetings? Thank you. If it's Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Chair. We're going to be asked to vote on the recommendations. However, earlier in the report it said that Cabinet have agreed certain fines. I would like to propose what I think they should be. I think they're far too lenient on the ones that they haven't agreed. So before we vote on that, I would like to propose what I think is a better fine and see whether or not people agree with that. And I also wanted to ask this, that we have a mini crime wave occurring in this borough. What powers does the legislation give us to tackle juvenile delinquency?
Right.
Thank you.
So in terms of the juvenile delinquency, that's not for this policy. That is, well, obviously, if they're littering or they're fly tipping, then we'll deal with that through the process. But obviously, they're criminal matters as well, unfortunately. So that would be for the police. Just to say on the fine levels that haven't been agreed as yet, just to note that the default, the minimum discounted penalty and the statutory fixed range penalty are set in statute, so we can't go any higher than those levels.
Councillor Ainsley, did you want to make any additional recommendations?
I did. I don't really know if I follow what Stuart has just said there, but I'll go for it anyway. So on point 3, failure to produce waste documents, business, the statutory fixed penalty is 300. I would like to see that as being £1,000. It's same with 4, because these people that are illegally transporting waste and dumping it, they can make £300 in one day. It's not going to be a deterrent. But if we're not able to do that, then hands are tied. But I would like to recommend that is increased to £1,000, reducing to 300 for early payment on both 3 and 4. Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis, is that a possibility?
Sorry, no, sorry if I didn't explain myself correctly. So the maximum fine is set by government. We can't change the maximum fine. That's as high as we can go, unfortunately.
Right. Moving on. Right.
Oh, wait,
Councillor Larman.
Just to go back on that, I know what you're saying is correct, but after 3 fines, it's all automatically goes to court, and then that would be when the higher penalties come in. So I think that's illegal. We can't do anything else other than statutory. It's not out of our hands.
Thank you.
And hanging's been put, not allowed now. We don't hang people.
Right. So, right. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Members, I will move the recommendation set out of paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ainsley, thank you. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Councillor Fuller, you wish to leave the meeting now as you've got another one?
By your leave, Chairman, yes, if that be acceptable. Thank you very much.
Agenda item 6, Culture and Tourism Strategy. Members, we have before us a report from the Assistant Director, Climate and Growth, which provides details of the progress of the Tourism Task and Finish Group and presents the Culture and Tourism Strategy for consideration. Mr. Masters, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This report in front of you highlights the work of the Task and Finish Group that was established to look at improving tourism in Castle Point. Based on the work of the Task and Finish Group, there was clear scope to develop the proposition for tourism to encompass cultural activities, including heritage, arts and creative cultural. Part of the work of the Tourism Task and Finish Group involved mapping key visitor attractions within the borough and the key assets, and this piece of work was provided to the consultant, which ultimately fed into the strategy. At the Cabinet meeting in November, members agreed, following the work of the group, to a report setting out UK SPF expenditure plans, which included the recommendations to commission a consultant to write a draft tourism and culture strategy. Following this, we undertook a very competitive tender process just before Christmas, with 11 responses received to the tender. An organisation called Curated Places were appointed in early January to carry out the work, owing to a considerable amount of experience in other regional strategies and other strategies of a similar nature across the country. They undertook a considerable amount of engagement locally. There was various workshops with key stakeholders, one-to-one interviews which are included within the appendices of the strategy, as well as workshop sessions with key groups and local organisations, etc. All of those are documented, included in the appendices of the strategy. We reconvened the Task and Finish Group on the 29th of April, where members received the first draft of the strategy. So the strategy itself is entitled Fresh Horizons, which you have with you. It sets out to an exciting vision, we feel, to make Castle Point the best place in Essex for lifelong creativity. It has seen a wider pool of stakeholders, as I say, in business and creative, and the tourism sector is engaged in its development. And what it does is it places the council as the facilitator rather than the direct deliverer. So bringing those groups together to sort of grow the creative side of it first, then growing the tourism sector, growing the local tourism spend, etc. The strategy has 6 clear pillars that form the foundation of an action plan with a set of 30 actions, so it's in total. And the strategy itself looks beyond even potentially the life of the council, beyond to 2030, and yeah, positions Castle Point, we feel, in a good footing in terms of visitor economy. Following the work of the Task and Finish group, members of that group were provided with a copy of the strategy and invited to respond to any comments. We did receive comments, which were very productive, and largely around the destinations, some queries around that, some feeling that it didn't draw out strongly enough some of the tourism assets, particularly Canvey Seafront. Noting these challenges, we went back to the consultants and raised this and asked them to amend the strategy to provide specific sections on the key destinations. So what we come back with was spotlights and highlighting opportunities around these destinations for Hadley, Canvey Seafront and Benfleet as a gateway destination. And there are a number of sub-recommendations for those and actions for those particular destinations. Cabinet members were also provided with a pre-briefing on the 13th of May where they made some suggestions around further KPIs and return on investment, which is included within the document and page 10, I believe. The report itself recommends to members that they, 1, approve the draft culture and tourism strategy for adoption, and 2, that the actions set out in table 1 of this report are taken to deliver the short-term actions arising from the strategy. We've made some of these recommendations, within the table 1 because, in truth, the capacity within the team to deliver on this strategy, given its ambitions, we don't have the expertise in the creative and cultural sector. So it would require us to look to utilise reserves or future UK SPF funding to appoint a cultural officer, a tourism officer, and then put extra resource into marketing and branding. So we've got a good offering to promote. So a lot came out around what to do in Castle Point, local guides, that sort of thing. So we've included that following the members' recommendations. I think that kind of sums it up quite well. As I say, we've come up with some quite strong recommendations. The strategy itself does around building the foundations, interventions, and then the activation. So there's a lot there to read. But yeah, happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Masters. We have a question from Councillor Courts.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions that I'll come to later. Firstly, can I say, personally speaking, as a member of the Task and Finish group, the document that was produced at the end of it had no relevance to what we was discussing whatsoever. And secondly, how much did we spend on that strategy? Thank you.
The commission was £30,000 of UK Share Prosperity Fund money.
It feels like something that could have been done on ChatGPT because it's got no relevance to Castle Point throughout it.
I mean, we feel it does. We didn't.
Six pillars. Just seems very cheesy and sales speak and has no relevance to anything that was discussed. We didn't mention any pillars, let alone 6 of them.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay.
Councillor Bredding.
Thank you. I attended 2 meetings of the Tourism Task and Finish group, and the second one, The draft report wasn't presented to us in advance of the meeting, so we had no opportunity to study the draft report. And we were trying to look at it during a presentation from this consultants group, which was very difficult. At the end of it, I think a number of us were very concerned that there's a very heavy bias towards culture and the arts within the report. And we understood we were there to look at tourism and how to, bring tourists into the borough. So I think we were quite concerned and did express that at length following that meeting. And I think those on the task and finish group would agree with me on that. There was very limited discussion when I asked how many businesses on Canvey Seafront were approached to participate in what they felt were the barriers towards increasing the tourism, which I think is fundamental to us being able to do anything within the borough. I was told that there was one at the hotel on Canvey, and that one group on Canvey didn't want their responses publicised, but we would be furnished with those, but we haven't seen those at all. And unless we identify some of the barriers towards the tourism, I think we're very limited in taking reactive steps to increase it. I understand, and I wasn't aware that anybody at Hadley Park, any of the businesses at Hadley Park were spoken to. I feel it's so heavily biased towards culture and very limited towards enhancing the tourism towards our barrier. So it would have been, I think, useful for some of the discussions we had, some of the suggestions that members made have not been included at all. And we live in the borough. And I think some of our suggestions could at least have been given some consideration. So I'm going to ask, because we're asking the council to commit £385,000 towards enhancing or going further with this. It's a lot of money. I'm not convinced it's going to have the desired results within our borough. So I'm going to request that the report be referred back to the Tourism Task and Finish group so that they can look further into it and make their comments and suggestions to be added to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding KPIs, what's the base level? How do you measure that you've got an increase in visitor spend of 15%? How is that measurable? I just don't understand how you can measure that and where your base figure is coming from. Thanks.
Would you like to answer any? No? No. Ian Butt, would you like to answer?
Yeah, we'll have to come back to how we measure that, but there is data out there that is collected by various agencies in terms of tourism spend and tourism visitor numbers. I've seen some of that data myself in the past.
So is it local data?
Collecting local data on matters like that is actually really difficult to do and quite resource intensive. Therefore, as I said, we'll come back exactly what the source is, but there is data out there which does measure tourism spend and visitor numbers to particular areas. But we'll come back in terms of how that data is collected.
Councillor Cortez.
Thank you again, Chair. Just things that are missing. We've just spent or committed £2 million on doing up the paddocks. I don't think the paddocks is mentioned as a way of bringing people into the area. I don't think Hoffs is mentioned. We haven't mentioned the Transport Museum. Castle Point has got in it the first mini roundabout in the UK in it, and we haven't even mentioned that. To have the first of anything. There was just so many things that are not in that travel and tourism guide or strategy that it shows that it hasn't been done by anyone that knows the area at all.
Ian Butt, please.
Yeah, Chair, can I recommend to the committee that we defer this and actually defer this back to the Task and Finish group? You're raising a number of questions that quite clearly you feel have not been addressed. And I think it's only appropriate that we allow the Task and Finish group to have further discussion and debate on those issues, and then a further report to be made back to this committee.
Are the committee happy with that? Right. Right, we move on then to agenda item 7, Cycling Task and Finish Group Update and Action Plan. Members, we have before us a report from the Assistant Director, Climate and Growth, which provides details on the progress of the work of the Cycling Infrastructure Task, I'll get my words out in a minute, Task and Finish Group. Mr. Butt, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Manda Parat, who wrote this report, sends her apologies for this evening. She had a pre-existing engagement. But thank you for this opportunity to go through the report. This report highlights the work of the Cycling Infrastructure Task and Finish Group, which was established by this committee in November 2024. The purpose of the group was to consider investment in cycling and walking networks, which can increase the use of cycling and walking for community and daily use, which includes things like trips to shops, school, or to community facilities. So it didn't include leisure cycling. So it didn't, for example, include mountain bike usage at Hadley, for example. The role of the group also provided input into the emerging Castle Point local cycling and walking infrastructure plan that has been prepared by Essex County Council. For brevity, I would refer to that plan as the LC WIP. The report highlights the work of the Task and Finish group, including engagement with residents and businesses. The latter, with businesses, is absolutely vital, as the Task and Finish group also consider the provision of cycling storage facilities at workplaces and key destinations, such as supermarkets. This working with businesses, will be continued by officers as part of our ongoing business liaison and when we deal with planning applications. The fundamental issue that the group was seeking to address is the very low use of cycling, in particular as a form of transport for commuting, at a level which is below 1%. 1% is the county average for the use of cycling, and we were below that level. It actually translates to about 400 people who use cycling for commuting, which is low. The Task and Finish group has met 3 times, and on one occasion it included a presentation from the lead officer at the Active Travel team at Essex County Council on the emerging LC WIP, which was discussed by the group at that meeting. The LC WIP itself is set out in Appendix 1. It provides a detailed picture of how the plan has been developed and an incredible amount of statistical information, which is crucial as it provides evidence supporting funding applications for infrastructure investment. But plainly, without an LC WIP, we will struggle to secure investment in our infrastructure within this borough, particularly from Essex County Council. It also provides evidence of secured developer contributions and as evidence for planning policy as well. The LC WIPs also sets out priorities for investment. The Task and Finish group consider these priorities and generally agree to them. However, the group particularly pressed for prioritisation of the Canvey Town Centre to Benfleet Station route, which is CP10, and the Benfleet Station to Lee Station route, which is CP12. I'm pleased to report that these have been included in the draft LC WIP, which is set out on page 69 of the report. These 2 routes are supplemented by 2 other priority routes, the A13 Sadler's Farm to Hadley, which is CP2, and Tarpots to Benfleet, which is CP7. The Task and Finish group raised concerns about the use of the A13 due to congestion and typography. The continuation of the Task and Finish group, which is one of the recommendations in the development of an action plan, will ensure members' input into measures that help improve safety on the A13, particularly on Bread and Cheese Hill. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about the actual hill, but what we can influence is making sure that cyclists in particular who use that hill have very safe facilities, given that the reduction in speed that that they will experience, and also that is a congestion hotspot as well. The Task and Finish group also expressed concerns about external connectivity for cycling to neighbouring council areas. I can advise that Essex County Council are preparing an Essex-wide plan which will cover these issues. We will also continue to liaise with Southend Council on cross-boundary issues between the two boroughs. The two areas that councils expressed the greatest concern were at Sadler's Farm and at Rayleigh Weir. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report as that the committee recommends to Cabinet that the LC whip be approved, subject to the amendments which I've outlined, set out in paragraphs 5.16 and 5.8, and that the Task and Finish group works with officers on the development of an action plan to develop cycling infrastructure within the borough. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Butt. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. Just one small point. It's Bike Week that's coming up next week. Are we going to be running some council comms just to try and encourage people? I appreciate that most of the Essex County Council stuff they said can't be done for about 2.5 years, but can we just try and encourage people with our comms, what with it being Bike Week next week?
I will speak to our comms team about that, but yes, I will urge them to run some comms.
Councillor Ainsley.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of points I'd like to make. I'm a cyclist. Our roads are so dangerous. I mean, I actually saw Councillor Cortez the other day, and as I was cycling back home, just round the corner, somebody pulled out straight in front of me, and I was nearly knocked off my bike. And that's in a quiet road. There's so much traffic on the roads, it's not healthy. You're breathing in pollution all the time. I don't know how it's supposed to be, a healthy way to travel. It's not. It'd probably kill you quicker than driving, to be fair. Now, cycling can be a cheap activity to do if you had the safe routes to do it. But there are families that can't afford bicycles, and I'm just wondering if we can do a bicycle recycling scheme. There are so many bicycles that, when I do go to the tip, perfectly serviceable bicycles are chucked in the skip. I think that we should do something about that and pass them on to families in need, or young people or people that can't afford a bicycle or a car or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. I also ride a bike, and I agree. It is a dangerous activity, unfortunately, and that is why things like the LC whips are so important, because the aim here is to improve the facilities and the infrastructure for cyclists. In terms of the cycling recycling scheme, I think that what we'll start off by doing is find out what schemes are active in the area. We'll take that away and report back on that. And then from there, we can then make a call as to whether or not that's something we need to investigate further.
On the recycling scheme, I did actually take a bicycle out to a scheme that was in Rochford. I always get those two mixed up, in Rochford. So you drop the bike off and they mend it and give it to. I think these ones actually went out to Africa. But it'd be nice to produce them, for our community.
I've personally used one as well.
Councillor Brading.
Picking up on that point that Councillor Ainsley said, I would like to point out that there is a scheme that is already run in schools where disadvantaged families are offered free new bikes. Because I know children at our school, and we had 8 last year, which is very welcome. But although the schools, they do run cycling proficiency for children or youngsters, unfortunately, the roads just do not facilitate any cycling. I mean, the paths are quite congested, and those cars that are not parked on the path anyway don't actually help And I don't know what we can do because our roads are quite narrow, so I don't know how we facilitate that further.
Thank you. Thank you. The LC whip does contain, actually, on pages, it's about page 66 to 68, some of the more detailed recommendations. Now, these are not set in stone. And as I said earlier, the continuation of the task and finish group will enable us to actually have an input into some of the detailed implementation of this. But you are absolutely right. The balance here needs to be struck between, obviously, motorists using the roads and the ability to access freely across the borough, and at the same time, people being able to use bikes safely within those. And some of the measures they've introduced have been quite clear, Essex County Council have, that they would seek to do this within the existing infrastructure. In some of the measures, they're actually proposing to take away, for example, there may be a central island down the middle of a road, which would then become just a normal white line, and that would then provide greater road capacity then to actually put some cycling facilities in. But all of these issues, I think the next phase of this is that designing that detailed action plan.
Councillor Knott, Councillor Ainsley, I've got you down.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, but I just want it noted that we're really grateful to the amount of time that Mike Simmons put into this. And I mean, you know, going down early in the morning, standing outside Benfleet station, and some of the stories he told us. And I also want to thank the members of the public that we invited in, came in, and they put a lot of time into that as well. So I want that to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knott. And yes, we do thank them very much. Councillor Cortez.
Again, mine's not, thank you, Chair, mine's not a question so much, it's just to talk about, we discussed during the task and finish group about the recycling schemes, and Holly managed to find loads of schemes for us, that maybe we could do as a council, again, publicise those, that there are cycle refurbishments and donation schemes locally that are available for people.
Thank you, that's great. So.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just come back on both of those points? First of all, thank you very much for highlighting the work of Mike Simmons. He's not here tonight because he retired yesterday, so but I'm sure we do have his contact details, so we will pass those on to him. So thank you very much for that. And yes, as part of the assessment in terms of the recycling schemes that are available, I absolutely agree with that. We should be promoting those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. I don't think that we got the capacity on the roads to segregate an area for cyclists. We just don't. We don't even have the capacity on the roads for two cars to pass most of the time. I would much prefer to see, and a healthier way would be to use footpaths, which like the one that goes from Benfleet station to Hadley and on to Lee. I mean, that's a lovely cycle, but the path is so it's lumpy, it's rutted, it's a very, very uncomfortable ride, and if you want to go up to Hadley, it's a very steep climb. Going the other way towards Pitsea, well, you've got to take your life in your hands. I've mentioned this before. So when you go from Benfleet station to Pitsea, you go along the coastal path, and it's an ankle turner. It's about so wide. It's rutted. I've seen. I mentioned this before. A young lad actually fall off his bike down into the tide was out, fortunately, but into the creek. To continue to go to Pitsea, you have to go underneath the flyover. There's no good paths. We need the infrastructure, because once you get to the other side of the A130, the paths are actually quite good. But the Benfleet section is absolutely deplorable, and we really need something done about that. And then you can get away from the roads. You don't need to go on the roads. If these paths are made safe and cyclable and walkable, more people will use them. And they're a bit of an ambush as well, because they're so out of the way. Something needs to be done, and we need to promote our waterfront more. this goes back to the tourism bit, but yeah, I just don't think that it's feasible to use the roads. They're too dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Points very well made. As I mentioned, there is a Essex-wide LC whip being prepared, and we'll take those points in terms of the connectivity through to Pitsea, to that group. In terms of CP12, which is the Benfleet station to Lee, the proposal is to actually repave the entire route to take out the various unsafe and lumpy, I think was the phrase he used, bumpy elements of that. So that would be refurbished, and that will then become a dual purpose walking and cycling route. And by refurbishing it, that will encourage more users.
Yes, Councillor Ainsley.
One other thing that I wanted to mention about that route is there is nowhere between Benfleet to Lee to sit down. I mean, can we get benches put along there? Because that will encourage lots of people to go there and, you know, just go halfway, go a third of the way, sit down and come back. And it's beautiful there. You know, you can watch, look over the marina and watch the sunset. But there is just nowhere to sit down at all.
As part of the detailed discussions we're having with Essex County Council, we'll take that forward.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the report where you, the design response, where there are potential interventions of how you would increase the comfort and safety of riders in the borough. How would you envisage some of the interventions to actually happen?
I don't have a full answer on that, I'm afraid. But this is where the action plan needs to kick in. So they've identified priority routes. So they're the main routes that will be tackled first. So they've identified them as high, medium, and low. And there's 4 routes that they've identified as priority routes. The detailed design work of that needs to take place, but most crucially, we need the funding. And that's where the LC whip is so important, because in order to secure funding, whether it be through Essex County Council funds, whether it be through government funds, recycling funds, whether it be through Section 106 agreements and such like, we need the firm evidence that the LC whip provides. So as part of the detailed planning of this, there will be, I would anticipate that for each of these routes there will be a detailed implementation plan which will set out how that implementation will take place. And I'd start to identify where that funding can come from.
Councillor Jones, you wish to come back?
Yes, please. Thank you. So let's say you have certain measures that you wish to put in place. You know, how exactly, which organisation would you turn to see that actually put in place?
So if it's on highway land, it'll be Essex County Council, as it currently is. If it's on private land, we would have to work with the private landowners, and as part of those improvements. Obviously, if it's private land and it's existing footpath or existing cycleway or bridleway, then they have legal obligations to make for those paths anyway. So that's one of the reasons why the focus has been on existing footpaths and bridleways, because that does make it easier because they're already in existence.
Any further questions, members? No. Members, I will move the recommendation set out at paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cortez, thank you. Sorry, members, I'm getting a bit dry and tired as well. Is that agreed, members? Yes. Item 8, update from the Climate and Policy Scrutiny. Councillor Edwards isn't here. However, I understand a meeting has been scheduled for the 16th of June and an update will be provided at the next Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. Thank you. Thank you. And we move on to the last item on the agenda, the work plan. Members, the updated work plan has been circulated. Members, I would like to add a review of the HMO's houses of multiple occupation to the work plan. Are there any questions or further suggestions? Are there any questions or further suggestions? Thank you. Councillor Cortez.
Hello, Chair. Just wondered if there was any update regarding my question from the last meeting. Have we had a response from Essex County Council about turning on our streetlights?
Yes, there is an update on that. A report is expected to go to members next month on this item, Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, appreciated.
Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say I think that there was too much on this overview and scrutiny today. There was several very long reports that we needed to work through. I just feel that it should have been split really into two separate meetings. I don't know how other people felt about that. Yeah.
Councillor Jones.
I just want to second what Councillor Ainsley was saying, that there was a lot on the agenda for tonight, and in particular that the reports weren't just short reports, they were at length, and for us to be able to look through them thoroughly and bring to bear our scrutiny, really it was, in my opinion, and I agree with Councillor Ainsley, that it was too much, and I think we are not the only two who think that.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thankfully one of the things we were looking at tonight was pulled for obvious reasons that we come back to. Yeah, it's too much for one night, 4 agendas in there. 7 days to read through this amount of paperwork is not enough. I have brought this up before. I cannot do it in 7 days, and so can not some other members. We have full-time jobs. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot to pick apart. This amount in one meeting is... we can't go ahead, keep going forwards with this amount in one meeting and expect us to scrutinise properly and effectively. Thank you.
Anya?
Members, the points are well made. I've noted that. We'll look at future agendas going forward to make sure that the workload's balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Are there any further questions or suggestions? No? Then, members, that concludes the business for this evening. Thank you for your attendance. I'd also like to thank our independent persons for joining us, and we look forward to working with you again. The meeting is closed at 20:42. Thank you.